Hello and welcome to the Creators Guild podcast. I'm Chris Howell, and with me,
Jared Loveady.
and we are here to talk about all things creative. And today, it is Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas, Jared.
Merry Christmas, Chris.
And not only is it Christmas, we are to the epilogue in A Flight from Shadows. It's been a very long reading, long, strange trip so far.
32 weeks.
Yeah. This is, we're 30.
No, 30.
This is 33, right? This episode,
I
this
believe
is week
so.
33. Yeah, because the previous chapter, yeah, we got back in sync chapters with weeks. So we did 32 last week. It's 33.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
A long time.
Yeah. And we're not ready to read book 2 at all. We wanted to have book 2. Our goal was to have book 2 released now.
Yeah.
You know, we'd go right into book 2.
That was the goal.
That was the goal. So we're still shooting for if we can get through some editing the next couple weeks, and then, you know, hopefully, maybe, I'm not going to put a date out there. Soon.
I'm thinking early spring.
Yeah.
Once we get, because we've got revisions we're finishing.
We've got a few things to go through.
And, well, actually, we're in rewrites and then editing and then revisions.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
But we've been through, I mean, the last 2 months we've planned on doing editing and stuff. I had the hail damage on my house, and it destroyed my roof and it destroyed all my solar panels. And so I had to get that replaced. And in the middle of getting that replaced, we decided, hey, while the roof's off, we've been trying to plan a remodel on one portion of our house for 5 years. The roof's coming off. Now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
And so it pushed everything else to the back burner, because when you have the roof torn off your house and there's rain and all these other issues, you can't be like, well, you know, I really want to write this book.
Yeah. There are priorities.
But hey, you might notice we're in a little bit different setting today. This is new. For those watching on video, if you're following us on YouTube, following along, we're getting a more permanent setup going on.
An actual kind of studio even.
Yes. So this nice little table that I'm sitting at right here, it looks like it's one of those horseshoe looking like classroom tables. Plenty of room. We can handle what? 6, if we were really friendly. We could handle probably a group of 8.
You'd have to be pretty friendly, but yeah.
Yeah. But still, we could do it. I think we could do it.
3 comfortably.
Oh, yeah. 3 very comfortably. So that's, we're working on it. We're going to try to set up for this next coming year, have a lot more interviews with especially local artists, local authors and creators. So we're getting set up and preparing to do that. So we're excited. This is our first time recording here in this setup. We got like I said, the fancy table set up. We got our computer area set up over there, you know, behind the scenes. And we're excited to go. I'm excited to see where 2025 is going to go.
Me too. Hopefully forward.
Yes. Up, and away. That's the goal. But we're going to we'll jump past all that, and we're going to get into some reading. So this is the end of book 1, the epilogue of A Flight from Shadows. Chronicles of Duradim, Part 1, Ascension of a Queen, Volume 1. If you haven't gotten yours, once again, go get it. It's too late to order it for Christmas for somebody. But for next year, New Year's gift, order it today. Maybe you'll get it in time. You can give it to him for a New Year's gift. Epilogue, Crimson Canvas, Cycle of Rio, year 12182. She had known him her entire life, yet others did not believe he was the man she saw. They could not believe. They had trusted him, some to their utter peril. Memories of Duradim, Radavant's royal page to the queen. Twilight reached from the distant rocky hills across the half-barren Paramese countryside to lay its gentle hand on the fenced paddock where Corvin casually leaned against a rail. Two of his men were in quiet conversation next to a nearby outbuilding on the small farm. Corvin did enjoy the solitude of the country. At times he considered abandoning his many carefully laid plans to slip away into obscurity, but he knew himself too well. He would become restless, and his ever-calculating mind would drive him back to his machinations. Still, he took pleasure in the simple beauty of the rugged rocky hills that made up most of the countryside in the Paramese Empire. As shadows faded into the coming darkness, he heard the sound of hooves on the hard-packed road, the accompanying jostle of tack, and the creak of leather. He remained in his relaxed posture and allowed the riders to come to him rather than moving to greet them. He watched a night grouse creep from the scraggly brush on the far side of the paddock before taking flight. It set off a chain reaction of several others who joined their companion in the skies. He watched them disappear into the darkness as his observations were interrupted by a deep bass calling his name. "Premier Corvin." The name was spoken in a questioning, hesitant tone. Corvin sighed, straightening and turning to face the new arrival. 4 men stood in a broken line in the entrance of the paddock. They were fairly nondescript. 2 were fair-haired, one with a foppish mop, the other with close-cropped hair. His elven ears stood out more prominently than those of the average high elf. The other 2 had darker, shoulder-length locks, though the precise shade was lost in the deepening gloom. The only distinctive characteristic they all shared were their leather jerkins and the swords they carried at their waists. The speaker stood slightly ahead of the others, his chin hidden in a trimmed beard. "We didn't expect to find you here," the speaker said. He had the slow drawl of the East on his tongue. "We thought to find one of your men, or a messenger." "Indeed," Corvin replied calmly. "I do hope my presence does not make you uncomfortable. Were I in your position, I would want this meeting to end as quickly as possible. I would hope to receive my pay and be on my way to Eastern Cuvia." "Yes, Premier," the speaker continued. "Since the events at the palace, we have been in hiding. We wish to leave Perome as soon as we can." "I shall dispatch you momentarily," Corvin said as he waved a hand toward his men. One of them retrieved lit an oil lamp. He carried it toward the paddock, and the other picked up a small chest just large enough to require both hands to carry. "I think you will find my compensation for your services adequate," Corvin continued as the man with the chest rested it on the fence rail. He raised the lid and tilted it slightly. The light of the oil lamp reflected off a small fortune in gold and precious stones, which painted the lid in a dazzling rainbow. All 4 men made to walk forward, but Corvin forestalled them with a wave of his hand. The man with the box closed the lid before he sat it on the ground, then leaned casually on the fence as he watched the man with mild interest. Corvin let an edge enter his voice. "Before any transactions take place, I have some questions for which I would very much like to have answers. I find it curious that you came here this evening to be paid for a job that was not completed." Even in the dimness of twilight and the meager light of the lamp, Corvin saw all 4 men stiffen at his words. "What are you saying?" the apparent leader asked, all hesitancy gone from his voice. "We were hired to attack the captain and his men, and to make it look like an open attack on the princess. We did what we were asked to do." "Now, I see things a bit differently," Corvin replied, and tapped his chin ponderously. "If I remember the terms of our arrangement, the men who were hired by my compatriots, meaning you, were meant to do a job. They were to kill the captain of the guard, and as many of his men as they could, and make it look like a failed attempt to assassinate the princess. Baron Imari was most certainly not supposed to die. That mistake alone will cost me considerable time and resources to remedy. Some may call that semantics, but you must admit, if those were indeed the requirements, then the terms have not been met. You do see my confusion, do you not?" "We tried to kill him," the blond man with the larger ears replied. "They were better than us, and Lewin died not long after we got away from the palace. We had to bury him ourselves, and the Baron was just in the wrong place. That's not our fault." "Quiet, Rold," the deep-voiced leader commanded before he addressed Corvin again. "We did attack the captain, but he's no easy prey. And we were able to injure him by chance. But we did kill at least two of his men, and for that we want our pay. If you didn't want your Baron dead, you should have made sure he wasn't there when we were." Corvin dropped his hands and released an overly dramatic sigh. He turned and paced slowly in front of the stern eyes that followed his steps. "It is no secret that the realms of Kuvia frequently squabble, and at times they come to blows. Occasionally one house or another resorts to assassination. In such times, the Assassin's Guild is typically employed to assure both discretion and competence. In those instances, the goal is more short-sighted than what I am trying to accomplish. When one wants to maneuver, one hires the guild. When one wants to start a war, other means must be employed." He paused, looked at the men, and let his gaze harden to meet theirs. "In either case, one cannot rely on incompetent fools, nor reward them for their failures." The leader opened his mouth to speak, and took a half-step forward. Corvin said as he held up a hand. "I have a proposal for you. You are not members of the Assassin's Guild, but I offer you the same terms they would receive if they failed in their duties. The blood that should have been spilt by your hand will be paid by your own. Your lives are therefore forfeit." The three men behind the leader were suddenly on alert. They shifted to form a half-circle and drew their swords. The leader hesitated only a moment, then smiled grimly. "Premier, you did not bring enough men. I know there are only these two with you, and they will not be enough." He drew his sword, the sound like a drawn-out hiss of a viper, as he slowly slid it from its scabbard. "We will kill you all, and take what is rightfully ours," the man said in a low voice. Corvin smiled and turned casually to stride to the fence. He removed his coat and folded it neatly as he spoke. "You are mistaken," he said conversationally. "My men are not here to kill you." He retrieved the long object that leaned against the opposite side of the fence, then turned to draw his own sword in a quick, fluid motion. "They are here to hunt you down, if any of you try to escape." 4 sets of eyes stared at him from blank, confused faces as he moved away from the fence, enjoying the familiar feel of the hilt as he rolled it in his hands. "As you see," he continued, and gave the sword a few swings to loosen his wrists and shoulders, "I find removing incompetence an exceptional way to relieve frustration." The leader spoke again, the hesitancy back in his voice as Corvin moved toward the group. "Surely you cannot mean to best all 4 of us, Premier." His words were accompanied by a small chuckle, but the sound was forced and belied his confidence. "That is precisely what I meant," Corvin replied casually before he sprang forward, offering no warning before his attack. He felt himself glide across the short distance between him and the 4 men. As one, they began to react, but they still seemed confused by what was happening, as though their minds could not comprehend 1 man attacking 4. To Corvin, they seemed to move like men trapped underwater, their actions slow and lumbered. His blade met no resistance, as it made 4 precise incisions, in an identical slash across the left cheek of each man. He twirled away from their flailing blades, somewhat surprised that they weren't accidentally hacking at each other. Before he came to a stop a pace away, the red tip of his blade glistened in the lamplight. The men watched him warily. One of them held a hand to his damaged cheek. The cuts were superficial. Corvin had made sure of that, just enough to break the skin and let them feel the sting of his blade. "You should have left the moment you saw me here," he told them. He shook his head disappointedly. "Wiser men would have ridden past and disappeared, making sure I never found them. But now it is too late. I have marked you. Your lives are now mine." "Get around him," the leader said, quickly moving to one side. "We're going to kill this bastard." The others shared hesitant glances before each followed his direction. They shifted into a wide circle with Corvin at its center. He silently watched and took in a deep breath of the Paramese air. It always felt somehow lighter to him than that of his homeland. He then exhaled slowly and waited for the dance to begin. A silent moment passed, and Corvin thought he heard the distant chime of a bell, perhaps from a city tower that rang in the setting of the sun. The attack came from behind. Corvin had seen many fights play out in his lifetime and had been a participant in more than a few. He wondered why some men chose to offer some sort of war cry when they attacked their opponent. Perhaps it was an intimidation tactic, or a way of mustering courage. Regardless of the reason, he had always found it ridiculous. In this case, while it triggered movement from the other 3 men, it also gave him more than ample warning of the coming charge. He spun to meet the first attacker and easily deflected the oncoming blade. He reveled in the song of steel that reverberated up his arms. It brought with it a sense of life and awareness. Corvin spent most of his time weaving plans together. He prodded here and pulled there in an attempt to shape the future to his liking. However, it was in this simple dance, on the precipice of death, where he truly felt free. Lost in the motions, he wanted it to last forever. He was one with the blade, as it twirled and spun. It dipped below an attacker's onslaught and slashed in his arm just inside the elbow joint. His sword flicked past an opponent's guard and gently kissed his ribs. Corvin moved in a low arc as a sword glided across the back of an ankle and severed a tendon. Each movement was carried out with precision and in time with the constant tune of that song that rang from the steel in his hand. All too soon, he towered over the over the edge of his crimson-painted dance floor, the ringing of the song fading in the air. The 4 men lay in heaps. Blood seeped from wounds on nearly every part of their bodies. 3 did not move. The 4th, their leader, lay on his back. His breath filled the air with shallow gasps. His remaining eye found Corvin, and a single word frothed from his mouth. "Please." Corvin stepped up to the man and looked him in the eye for a moment before gently plunging his blade through the man's throat. He then knelt and found a patch of the man's clothing not painted red. There Corvin wiped his blade clean. He strode toward the fence, the exhalation of life and freedom slipping away. The exhilaration of life and freedom slipping away. "See that this is cleaned up and things are set in order on the farm," Corvin told his men as he sheathed the sword and began to unbutton his shirt. "I will need to return. There are still matters that must be tended to this night, and I have negotiations to complete early in the morning. Fetch me my horse while I change." "Yes, Premier," his men replied in unison. One of them turned to stride toward the outbuilding where his horse was tied. As he settled in the saddle, adorned in his fresh, unbloodied clothes, he glanced once more at the scene he had created. Dark pools moistened the ground. It was a steep, yet necessary price to pay for incompetence. He smiled at his handiwork. He hadn't been exaggerating when he told them the relief exacting such a price brought him. He sighed and thought of the plans he would need to set in motion tonight. The Baron's death was more of an inconvenience than these fools could have understood. Yet he already knew how to turn it to his advantage. There were preparations he would need to make before he returned to the Bronze Palace. He turned his mare and rode back toward the city, as he considered the new webs he would have to weave to accomplish his goals.
All right, the end.
The end. Dun, dun, dun. So, now you know who's behind it all. In the words of the mother from Mrs. Doubtfire, the whole time. So, Corvin, at least for the plotting, the scheming, the attacking, the threats on Tawara and Athandra's life, Tawara's life, Corvin.
Yep.
He's the plotter. He's the schemer. When we move forward, there's so much. So, book 1, volume 1 of part 1, Ascension of a Queen. This to us is like a 450-page first chapter.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
it establishes characters, gets the beginning of the plot going.
Yeah. And so Jared and I were talking about this the other day. Some people will not enjoy how we tell a story. We've gotten some recommendations from people. There's a lot of story. The standard story process is right at the beginning. You set in motion of here's the character. The character has a goal. here's the, you're introduced to this character. You're introduced to what they're doing. They're just a normal person. They get greatness thrust upon them, and they have some goal they need to accomplish. Like, but the reality is, for me, almost every story that you read, you know, Harry Potter is, oh my gosh, he's this orphan, but he's a wizard. And he's got to go to wizard school and learn how to get trained to actually use his power and be a real wizard. And Voldemort is the bad guy. And Harry needs to defeat Voldemort. And like, well, you find all that out right at the beginning. And it took 7 books to get there. But if you open and read the beginning of Harry Potter, you already know, like, there is no question, like, at all. Harry's going to defeat Voldemort.
Yes.
He's going to win. Like, that story is, he's not going to win.
Yeah.
Bilbo is they're gonna make it to Smog and to the gold and everything.
Yeah. Luke is gonna train in the Force.
Yeah.
And defeat Vader.
Yeah. Well, look, as soon as you meet Luke, meet the droids. Well, at the beginning, you meet Vader first. You get Leia, help me, Obi-Wan. You're our only hope. Well, right there, Leia is gonna get help.
Yep.
And you're introduced to Luke. Luke's gonna come help. And at Vader's right there at the beginning. You stole the plans. The minute the guys say, "Oh, that escape pod, there's no forms of life. Don't shoot it out of space. We need to preserve laser ammo." Like right at the very beginning, you already know they're gonna win. There's gonna be setbacks. There's gonna be issues along the way, but they're gonna win.
Yeah.
Whatever their goal is, that's what the story's about. Them accomplishing this goal and how they get to it.
Yeah. And we've written it more like a mystery. I would compare it to the difference between, oh man, my brain just went blank.
It happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
You got this. I'm sending you the vibes. Come on, brain. Pull it out.
Man, he's a detective. He's clumsy. What's his name?
A clumsy detective?
Yeah, he seems inept.
Clouseau?
No. Man, it's Columbo.
Okay, Columbo.
In Columbo, who did it at the beginning. And from there, it's figuring out how he is going to catch them.
Yeah.
Whereas we write more like...
Well, I mean, sorry to...
we write more like Murder, She Wrote. Something happened, and you go through it, and then at the end you find out how they defeat it, who did it and why. And
yeah. Yeah, and even like our main character is Tawara. Tawara doesn't know. There's animosity, obvious animosity. Tawara does not like Corvin, like at all.
Yeah.
So there's obvious conflict there, but we know from the prologue there's a threat from within the house. Tawara's mother, her death was not an accident. Dorinda witnessed this, and Dorinda, much to Jared's mother's chagrin, doesn't make it past the prologue.
Actually, she's not the only one that has said something about that.
Really?
Me. Yeah. I've had some ladies at work that were like, "You killed her."
Yeah. Sorry, Dorinda. There's Molly McCobb is an author that I'm connected with. I'm actually listening to her book Dark Bloom right now on Spotify, and she wrote something the other day, and on X, she gets on X and she's like, "I'm sorry, main character. I just came on here to do a little bit of editing. I didn't mean to make you kill more people." And I'm like, I replied, and I'm like, I know, right? Like, how many times the people that have died?
Oh, it's always spontaneous. We're always right in the middle of something. We're like, you know what? If we kill this person,
Yeah,
it moves this other thing along and it develops this other person, and it'll be better for the story.
Teth and who's the? Sometimes I can't remember the names of my own characters.
We have a few.
But Teth and the guy that's with Teth, the two Trekking, quote unquote, Trekking guys who try to kill Tawara, when like they meet with two of Corvin's soldiers, and they leave the Trekking camp, and then they go out, and here's this an actual Trekking person that they've obviously been torturing. We're like, we need to show what these guys are doing and what their process is and how they're moving in to try to go after Tuara and Athandra. And we're like, okay, they're gonna go out and meet these people, and somebody else is gonna die.
Yep.
Just we were like, oh well, yeah, we kind of need that. We kind of need like to show who these guys actually are, and who Corvin's men actually are. We've got to show that.
Yeah. The jailer.
Yeah.
That was just as we're writing, we're like, we need to show how twisted Teth really is.
Well, and at that point, we said we didn't just want to show how twisted he was, but we were like, Teth was just coming in, and then we said he needs to come back. He's going to come back, and he's going to be an integral part of some other plot stuff that we have planned in the future.
Yeah. How does he get away? Well, gotta kill some people for him to get away.
He's a crazy guy. He's literally like, he's a killer.
Mm-hmm.
So killers do what they do. You know.
Yeah. He tortures small animals as a child.
Yeah. Psycho's gonna psycho. So yeah, it just sometimes things just jump out and we're like, literally we'll be writing, typing in the keyboard, and then, here's a direction. Here's where it's going to go. And then one or the other of us will be like, yeah, yep, that's how it has to go. But on the flip side, originally I think we talked about this before. All 4 of the Trekking youths originally died.
Yeah, we killed them quite brutally.
Yeah.
And we still killed 2 of them quite brutally, but we decided that for some future plot development and character development, more character development, that we might want to keep some of them around for later. Yeah. So we rewrote and didn't kill half of them off.
Yeah. And to show, like, in this world that they live in, we explicitly said, well, Fram and Meg weren't considered adults, even by their own...
Right. They didn't have their colors, so...
So, that could potentially spark, okay, we're savages, we're not that savage. So, instead, we'll send them out to these mines for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how much better that is, but when you you live in a society where they walk moral razor blades, the line is very thin. So we wanted to talk a little bit today about where all of this came from. We're going to have a discussion. There won't be an episode next week. This is our last episode of the year. Christmas episode. Again, hence The Merry
The-
Christmas outfit.
Yes. And for those of you who can't see, it's a very bright green suit, red shirt, and Christmas lights embedded in the jacket.
Yes. Very spiffy. I was very excited to find this. It was not expensive, not very pricey at all. So I was like, that shall be mine.
Matching bow tie as well.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we're not going to have we're not going to have an episode next week. This is our last episode of the year. And then coming into the new year, the first episode of the new year that we want to do, we're going to sit down. We've had Adam and Jackie on, and we're trying to coordinate right now, but they've been on this journey with us the whole time. And we've done a couple of deep dives with them. And when they've been on before, we've been like, we can't really talk about that. Spoilers, it's coming up. Well, now that book one's done, we can talk about all the things in book one and how did we come up with this and what are their feelings on all of the different pieces and about all the changes, everything like that.
Yeah, so hopefully there's it's not 100% set in stone, but we're hoping that our next episode that we'll have them back. And
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. We want to dive into that deep dive. But today we want to, because book one's, we're done with book one. We wanted to go into, there's some stuff early on. How did we get to where we're at right now? And it's different. Some of the very early stuff that we were working on, Adam and Jackie don't even know about. The first writing that we did, we talked about when we drove to Tennessee.
mm-hmm.
Jared was driving and I had a notebook out and we were just writing notes of what we could potentially put into a story. At the time, when we first came up with writing the story idea, we were talking about Star Wars. And we'd said, well, what if we have this story about the Jedi Council and Anakin? And then we were like, okay, well, what if we create a different character, a different Jedi that isn't Anakin? Mm-hmm. And that way we can spin off a complete fan fiction that doesn't have anything to do directly with Anakin and Obi-Wan and everything, but it does involve a Jedi Council. So we started on that path, and we had a Jedi named Throckmore. And that Jedi was going to discover some, like a plot within, some corruption within another member of the Jedi Council. And then the Jedi themselves were, the whole thing with Order 60, what is it, Order 66?
Yeah.
Stuff to do with that. And we were like, okay, we can spin this off and make this thing with the Jedi Council and this apprentice and everything. And as we got into it a little bit more, we're like, well, we don't want to do anything with the Force. We don't want to do Jedi. We want to create our own world. So it left space, and it became Throckmore is.
He was like a general.
Yeah,
kind of.
He was kind of a general. We had come up with the name the Alkari at that point, and Throckmore was a member of the Alkari. And the Alkari had the ability to touch what we called the Ludra, which is like not the Force, not the one power. There's all kinds of different magic systems, power, whatever out there. That was ours.
Yeah. I never really developed it. It was it was a Force, one power kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the pathway we started down, is Throckmore. He had been, at one point, he had been a slave. And then he had freed his people and then become a general. And we had said the Alkari had formed a council, like after they'd gotten their freedom, there'd been wars that had happened back and forth. And then the different realms that had gone to war, we kind of created this separate space where the Alkari lived. And after they'd gained their freedom, the Alkari had all gone and they'd lived off at this separate place for a while. And then they kind of reintroduced themselves into society. They didn't really The people of the other realms didn't really like them, didn't want to accept them because they'd been outcasts and slaves for all this time until they freed themselves, and then they'd been reclusive and kept to themselves. But now they show back up, and it's because of them showing up, one, their physical might and their inner connectivity within themselves, within their society. They had been able to come in and usher in an era of peace. And because they were like this outside society, all of the realms had created, physically, we had said there was like a big inland sea that had not really an island, but kind of a peninsula that was tied via like land bridges to the different realms. But it was big enough to house an entire population. And at the north end of this whole area was called Meridian. At the north end of Meridian was the capital that all the realms had kind of come together and said, we're going to have a single capital.
How many realms do we have? We have 5 now.
We had, I think we had 6 or 7 realms at the time. And we were kind of playing off of Lord of the Rings, where we had dwarves, elves, high elves, wood elves, drow, 2 different humans, trolls,
And the cat things.
yeah, we'd had, I can't remember what we called them, but
I don't remember either.
it was like a semi cat race.
Somewhere between a Nico and a how do you say it? Catian
Yeah.
in Trek, somewhere in there.
Yeah. We called them the Nico because we were like, we don't have a name for them. So we
That's
were calling
right.
them the Nikos for a while. That's what they were called. But they lived like, they had like, there was like a desert wasteland with
Like an oasis.
an oasis in the middle. A big oasis, big enough to house a population.
Yeah.
And they lived there.
Which was within Wooderlands.
Yeah. But the Nikos in the oasis were all female. It was an all-female population. And males were like, it was kind of like the Rick and Morty episode with the where Rick and Summer go to the planet where they have the females run society and they just send mating drones out to the population. Like the males of this society were very Neanderthalic. And yeah, the whole society that, we had all these different realms. I don't know, maybe someday this will branch into a different story.
Who knows?
Because it's so different. It's not even close to the same thing anymore.
Yeah. The reins were loose when we were first going.
Yeah. Well, we had it all set up, and the opening scene of book 1 was Throckmore stood on a cliff looking up at the heights of Erith as the cold winds swept down from the heights of Erith, and he looked down across the valley of Midian to the Midian Valley and the city of the destroyed city of Midian, which is where Midian was, where peace had been pushed. All the realms had come together. They'd all united under one centralized government, and there was a council led by the Alkari because they had come back and ushered in this peace. They were able to touch the Ludra and use it, and they'd spent their time essentially becoming wise, and Alandar at this point had been alive for like 1,500 years, something like that. And so he's standing, looking out over from the heights of Erith, looking out over this desolation of where tens of thousands, he could sense all the death in this valley. Like the city of Meridian had been destroyed, all the population had been decimated, battles had been fought, with tens of thousands dying out in the valley of Meridian. And he could sense that through the Lutra, sense all the death and carnage and everything that had taken place, and the sorrow that he felt. But then also, it was before his people had been, the Okari had been enslaved. Then they had ushered in peace. And at this point, from Throckmore's perspective, now the Okari were being hunted. And that's where this story started. With all the, all that, everything we just described, it started right there. And then we started going down a direction and we said, well, we're going to change it. We're going to go from, instead of starting there with Throckmore, we're going to start when Throckmore's young and enslaved. And we're going to tell the story of the Alkari rebellion and how the Alkari get free. And so we started telling the story of Alandar. And we were writing about his training and him being like the torturous processes he went through because he was a gladiator then.
Yeah.
And then like the measures they went through to keep all the Alkari under control. And then we said, well, we need to make it more difficult than even what we had started, the path we had started down. And we need to have somebody else. So we brought in a potential love interest named Tawara. And then we said, Throckmore's kind of a hard name for a main character to be the whole time. Let's change it to Alandar.
Yeah, because that's so much easier.
Yeah. So then we're telling the story of Alandar and his love interest Tawara that helps him like break free, and then he goes out and he's the first domino that starts the process of freeing the Alkari and making an uprising of the Alkari rebellion. And then we said, okay, well, we're writing this. We want this to really be there to be some magic control. We're going to have the people who are controlling them, they are actually binding them with blood. And his love interest, Tawara, is going to figure this out. And then, okay, if they're bound with blood, what does that mean? Or like, well, they can't control anything they do. Like nothing. They can only follow, like any direction they're given from whoever they're bound to, they must obey. Right.
But it was against their will.
Yeah. Totally against their will. And then from there we were like, okay, well, wait, we need it. We started shooting holes in that. And, there's all kinds of stories but we started shooting holes in our own thing of, okay, well, if we're going to have them do X, Y, or Z, here's some holes in that. And we're like, okay, what if like they don't even have a will anymore? The binding takes away their will completely, buries it. And then we're like, okay, and we mentioned this before. How do you write a story from the position of a chair?
Yeah.
Like it's a chair.
Yeah. And then, it was like, okay, well, we'll have other people, we'll bring in other characters who will interact with them. And through those characters, we'll see how the chair acts.
Yeah.
Basically. And so we worked with that for a little while.
Yep. And then as we started writing, and then Jared one day was like, this is Tawara's story.
Yeah.
And we were like, yep.
Yeah.
This is now Tawara's story. She has become the main character.
Yeah. And then from there, it was like, okay, well, if we're going to tell Tawara's story, we need to give Tawara a story.
Yeah.
Not just how does she interact with Alandar and try to figure that out. It's like, well, she needs her own story.
Yeah. And hence, then it was, okay, well, Tawara's story, the ascension of a queen. She's a princess.
Mm-hmm.
And princesses potentially become queens. So we're going to start with ascension of a queen for Tawara. And how do we get there? And it was all political intrigue, and Corvin was the bad guy. And then no, Tawara's father is the bad guy. No, they're both bad guys.
Yeah.
No, one's a pawn to the other one. No, and it just kept evolving and changing. But the overarching story of, we're going to get there. The overarching story of the rebellion of the Alkari, the ascension of a queen for Tawara, the death and destruction, the battles, the wars, the all that stuff, everything that's those pieces that were part of the story before, they're all in there.
Yep. And we've had time and experience to lay that all out, talk it all out.
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be more modifications. But we've had the time now, especially having the experience of writing the first book, to say, okay, we can work this in, and this is how this event leads to the next event, and this other event, is a different arc that will eventually curve around and intersect the first arc, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So it's really evolved into a fully fledged story that we're going to be able to tell.
Well, one of the things we've spent time the past few days is we've been able to get together and talk through stuff, and we're in our edits and revisions for book 2. One of the things we're talking about is what are all the individual characters' stories. For example, Teth came in as he was going after Tawara. He was with his compatriot, which it's driving me crazy that I can't think of his name.
I can't either. You've got the book.
Okay, I got the book right here. I'm going to look up
chapter 4, 5.
Let's see. It's after A Needed Rest. Chapter 9. No. It's going to be before Teth, and we've said his name multiple times. Teth and it's Balor. I'm like, it starts with a B. Teth and Balor. Drive me crazy. Balor, we started writing from Balor's perspective, just so you get a feel for even this other person who's a murderer, killer, how much he despises Teth. Because in his mind, Teth, that's a little too twisted. That's a little beyond the pale, even for Balor. And then, originally both of the attackers in their little oasis in the valley where Tawara and the Trekking youths camp, originally they both died.
Yeah.
One of them got smashed in the face bad enough that it killed him, and the other one got stabbed in the neck. So they both died. And then they just found Corvin's men found some papers on the two men that they're like, they weren't supposed to have these. It easily implicates us. And we had that written in early on, and then we took all that out. Said we don't want to reveal that yet. We're going to hold it over a little bit. I don't know if you can hear or see on the camera. We have we had Molly come visit us the other day. Now we have Pickles. I don't know if you can hear Pickles meowing.
Yeah, she's not in shot, but she's definitely over there.
Yeah. She'll probably jump up here and join us. Well, maybe. Anyway, so we ended up, instead of killing both of them, we were like, what if Teth survives? Because we had Teth and Balor both die, and then we had somebody completely different.
Right. We just had an assassin.
Yeah.
That came and killed. Man, we're bad with names today.
I know. My brain is glitching. But it's Master
Duchesne.
Master Duchesne. Yeah, we had just another person come and kill Master Duchesne, and then we're like, we need to flesh that out more. We can't just say, oh, somebody killed Duchesne, and leave it at that. because it wasn't that basic, but that's kind of the feel that it had. Was, well, somebody came, was going to kill Tawara, killed Duchesne instead, and Duchesne killed that person. Instead, we were like, Teth's going to live, and he comes back, and he kills Duchesne. And we brought it out that Teth and Balor were supposed to go. They were supposed to go. They had a specific set of instructions to follow Tawara, and then another set of instructions. Duchesne was supposed to die. That's what Teth was saying when he was in the cell.
Mm-hmm.
But then we said, Teth's going to come back. Teth's going to play a role in the future. So we can't just bring him back and have them arrest him and kill him. He's got to get away. Well, now we're looking at, we know where Teth is going to come back in. We know what he's going to do, the part he's going to play in the plot. But what we were talking about the last couple of days is, what is Teth's story? How much of Teth do we need to follow? He's he's the bad guy, he's not the main character.
No, but he's a bad guy.
Yeah. But he's a threat, and some of what he does we might want to follow some of what he does. We don't want to just interject it and make it disjointed. But how much of Teth's story from the point of his escape to when he comes back in, do we need to tell? And then that'll be the same for, Captain Ethrin. He's not Tawara, but he's not there with Tawara and Athandra, but he's got stuff he's got to do. There are pieces. He's one of the pieces on the board that have to be moved around. So how much of his movement do we want to put in? What is his story? And then we've already gotten some stuff from Corvin's perspective. We've got more in book 2 coming up. So you start getting some of his plans and some of his scheming and whatnot. But how much of there'll be a lot more that comes out in the future about Corvin.
Yeah. Yeah,
but all these characters, what are all of their stories? We've now met. We're going to follow out. Alandar is going to have some. We've already said that Alandar was the original main character. Well, we have to tell Alandar's story. That's what sparked this whole book and sets up for a lot of stuff in the future. And we've been introduced now to Narvash and Bertrand and Lady Iskar and their positions in, their high positions among the Paramis, and in the Empire of Parom, as well as in the Separan priesthood. And all of that's going to be key to some major plot stuff moving forward. So how much of their individual stories do we need to know and understand and share? That's kind of what we've been talking about the last couple of days.
Yeah, and it's going to affect what we have to write.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will enrich and not take away from, not distract from the whole story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're talking through now. How much is enough and not too much, or,
yeah,
don't throw something in and then leave it vague.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of, I'm not a fan of vague, but we'll see. We'll see. But that's kind of that gets you to, when we talk with Adam and Jackie, we're going to talk pretty deep about what changes we've made in what they've read.
Yeah. Yeah, because they read the first manuscript.
Yeah. And there's some pretty significant differences. So we're gonna save that deep dive for them, and we're gonna talk through all the happenings within the book itself. But like I said, we never went over what we just talked through with Adam and Jackie before. This was pre diving in deep with them on that end.
Yeah.
That's how we got from a Star Wars fan, those are the steps that led us from here's a Star Wars fan fiction to building a world, to building characters and moving it from space with the Force into our own world with our own system, with all these different races in different realms, to diving into, okay, we're going to shift that and change it, and morphing it into now it's the story of Tawara, a princess who faces a realm on the brink of war and her ascension to become a queen.
Yeah. And
So.
it's always more to come.
Yeah. But the great thing is I don't know if it's great or if it's scary. Everything we just talked through, it's so different. It doesn't even have to be Tawara, Nefandra, and Alandar. And, we could change the name, now there's a new character who stands on the heights of Erith.
Yeah.
and looks down on the valley of Midian and the destroyed city of Midian. Or Meridian, not Midian. The destroyed city of Meridian, and can feel the Ludra and sense all the death and destruction that's there. It's a whole different story. It has nothing to do with anything we're writing now. Not at all.
No, but it doesn't mean it won't.
Yeah. Yep. I don't foresee that specific coming up with this, but
not that specific, no.
Everything we just said, we could be like, you know what? Let's go back and write that story now. We're going to write that series. It's not going to be as long.
Yeah.
It'll be a real trilogy. But maybe we'll go write that one.
Maybe.
Someday. Someday. But we got to get through this first. But looking ahead into the new year, we're going to try to really knuckle down. We've got some of the schedule stuff sorted out. We've got some remodeling stuff finished up. We've got our new setup here. We're going to try to get some help from helping with managing our website and editing and promoting and all that stuff, so we're not having to do it and we can focus more on the writing. We'll see where it goes.
All right.
Well, thanks for joining us today. It's been a fun year. So tired all the time. And we won't have an episode next year or next week. So have a Merry Christmas. Hope you had a good Festivus yesterday. And we look forward to joining you again in the new year. Till then, go in good spirits. Thanks for listening to the Creators Guild podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of A Flight from Shadows, available on Amazon. While you're there, please rate it and give it a review. If you like the Creators Guild, please like and subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. Until next time, go in good spirits.